Hello, students. I hope you'll be safe at home, spending your time with your family members, reading books, covering your syllabus also. Due to the national lockdown, university is also closed, and we are not able to meet the classes. It is our duty to finish the course also to provide you the material through various sources. Now, in semester 4, I'm concerned with paper 3, that is Indian English Literature. Now, this paper consists of poetry and drama, and I'm dealing with poetry part. In my classroom teaching, I remember I have finished Tagore's Gitanjali, the poems of Sarojini Naidu, Nissim Ejikil, A.K. Ramanujan. Now, I had to start Jayant Mahapatra, but unfortunately, due to lockdown, the university was closed. So, in this video lecture, I'll be giving you some points related to Jayant Mahapatra, and also will provide you an analysis of the poems which are prescribed in your course. 3 poems: Dawn at Puri, Grandfather, and Indian Summer are prescribed in your course. So, I'll give a brief introduction about the poet Jayant Mahapatra, then I'll come to the poems. Now, Jayant Mahapatra, one of the most important post-independence Indian English poets. One famous saying of Jayant Mahapatra regarding poetry is, poetry has been a cathartic means for me to purge myself of the various imperfections of life. This was a statement which was made by Jayant Mahapatra regarding poetry. He is one of the important Indian English poets, recipient of the prestigious Sahitya Academy Award and also the Padma Shri. Now, he was a student of physics. So he's a physicist turned poet. He began his career in a rather unlikely way. He spent much of his early life uncovering the mysteries of physics, but he always felt a certain inner restlessness and lack of direction. Now, when he was giving it a thought, then he felt subtle ways that there is a kind of connection between physics and poetry. According to him, physics is the poetry of the intellect, and poetry is the science of the intellect. He continues, in many ways, physics taught me to look into myself. Now, this was actually, his love towards physics, and ultimately, how does he come to poetry? Now, as I've just told you that he is a physicist, and like most of the Indian English poets, he's also a bilingual poet, writes in Uriya and English, an essayist. holds the distinction of being the first Indian English poet to have received the prestigious Sahitya Academy Award. He was awarded Padma Shri also in 2009. And if you remember that he was in the media coverage in the year 2015 when he returned the Padma Shri Award in 2015 to protest against the rising intolerance in India. Now, during the Gandhian period, we have the triumvirate, we have the trio, Mulkraj Anand, R.K. Narayan, and Raja Rao. When you talk about post-independence Indian English poets, so he's one of the three important Indian English poets constituting trio. The other two being A.K. Ramanujan and R. Parthasarathi. They are the finest poets of the Indian English poetry tradition. Now, if you look at the biography of the poet, then you'll find out that he was a Christian by inheritance and upbringing, though he was also influenced by Hindu culture, Hindu rituals. As he was growing, Mahapatra experienced the pull of both these religions. He expresses his feeling in his autobiography about his family. He said, as children, we grew up between two worlds. The first was home, where we were subjected to a rigid Christian upbringing, with rules my mother sternly imposed. The other was the vast and dominant Hindu amphitheatre outside, with preponderance of rites and festivals which represented the way of life of our own people. So we have actually, if you read his poetry, you'll find out that his creative self is primarily Hindu in terms of myth, symbols, folklore, and idiom. Now, he completed his post-graduation in science in physics from Patna University. He began his teaching career as a lecturer in physics in 1949. During his professional life, he taught physics at various government colleges in Odisha, including, a college in Sambalpur, Bhubaneswar, and Cuttack, etc. Now, he authored more than 2 dozen books, where we have some collections which he wrote in Oriya, and the rest of the collections are in English. Now, he came to this career quite late. He started writing poetry after he became 40 years old. He brought out his first volume of poems at the age of 43. His first poem appeared in his 40th year after he had developed a considerable feeling for the language. Now, his first book of verse, Close the Sky, 10 by 10, was published in 1971 after his 40s. But his other volumes followed in quick succession. It includes Swayamvar and other poems in 1971. If you read the poems, you'll find out that it deals with the theme of love and the magnificence it renders to the lovers. Now, the next volume of verse is A Father's Arts, 1976. In the same year, yet another volume appeared, a very significant Reign of Rights, 1976. And then we have some other collections like The False Start, the dispossessed nests, temple, a whiteness of bone, etc. Now, he received, as I told you, Sahitya Academy Award for his collection of poems called Relationships. Don't get confused with Relations, which is a collection of poems by A.K. Ramanujan. Now, so many awards were conferred on him. He was awarded the Ellen Tate Poetry Prize for 2009. He received the Sark Literary Award, Padam Shri, I have already told you. He was also awarded D.Litt degree by Utkal University. So, this was actually his background. Now, when we want to discuss the basic subject matter of his poetry, so we find that Orissa plays a very important role in his poetry. Now, he once said, "To Orissa, to this land in which my roots lie and lies my past, and in which lies my beginning and my end, where the wind keens over the great grief of the river Daya, and where the waves of the Bay of Bengal fail to reach out today to the twilight soul of Konarka, I acknowledge my debt and my relationship." This was actually the statement which he made once regarding the subject matter. Orissa is the subject matter. Now, he writes about what he knows best. Cuttack, for example, which was his home, about the cobbler on the street, the hunger of the street children, the pain in a woman's eyes. His poems are about real people and everyday emotions. And when you read the poems, you'll find out that the major themes which are there in his poems are Indianness, social scenario, time, family relations, theory of poetic creation, memory, love, nature, search for self, and so on. Through his interviews and other prose writings, he has confirmed that he owns his existence to Oriya land, I have just told you. History, myth, and society. Variety of themes. His themes range from sex to nature, from religion to superstition, from the metaphysical to the physical, from the personal to the impersonal. In all his poems, whatever the themes may be, there seems to be a meditative and reflective quality. We are bound to reflect on the issue raised by the poet. We can take some examples, say Hunger, for example, a poem, one of the prominent poems of the poet, which is reflective and meditative in nature. Now, the evil of prostitution finds a space in Mahapatra's poetry. Prostitution occurs on account of social injustice and economic disparity. Shiv K. Kumar, Pratish Nandi, Kamla Das, they have also actually treated love and sex in their poems. But Mahapatra never arouses ignoble instincts while he talks about love and sex. He's rather delicate, but obviously unsentimental and realistic. Now, when we say that he is, typical Indian poet, there is Indianness in his poetry. He's essentially Indian, insensibility, but it does not create the impression of Indianness by bringing such traditional, items like, tigers or, snakes or the snake charmers, as in the sense of, in the case of Sarojini Naidu, jugglers, crocodiles, etc. He is really Indian because he does not consciously try to be Indian, and thus is able to avoid many hackneyed, posture. His his Indianness is seen at its best in his Uriya poems, where the locale is actually the Orissa. Evening in an Orissa village is one example. Dawn at Puri is also one example of that, where Odisha is at the center, that is, India is, at the center. Now, when you, read his other poems, you find that poverty, hunger, and starvation. This theme is also very prominently dealt by the poet in most of his poems. This theme is actually studied from various angles, various points of view. Hunger, for example, is such poem. The War House in Calcutta Street is that poem which is having the same kind of theme, and also Man of His Night. Now, another theme which is very much visible is human relationships. And these relationships are actually revolving around sexual love. If you read the poem Lost, and if you read the poem The Logic, or if you read the poem The War House in a Calcutta Street, you will have the same kind of theme. Now, his interest in politics is also visible, is also revealed in his early poem on Gandhi. And some of his poems are also based on love, marriage, sex. This you'll find out while reading his poems. Now, British poetry, 20th century British poetry, you already studied. You are familiar with Imagist movement of the 20th century. When you read, images and symbols are very much there in Mahapatra's poetry. So when you read his poems, we find that Mahapatra seems to have been influenced by the Imagist movement, especially by Eliot and Ezra Pound. The poet, as I have just told you, being rooted in the traditions of Orissa, introduces so many religious images and symbols in his poems. Rain, for example, used as a symbol of wisdom and innocence. His images are, subtle, controlled, apt, moving, relevant, strengthening the significance of the meaning of the poem, as in the case of, symbols, because if images and symbols are used by the poet, they give heaviness, weight to the meaning of the poem. Now, so when you read the poem, we have actually the impression of T.S. Eliot and W.B. Yeats. Especially in few poems, we have some traces of Eliot's imagery used in the poem The Hollow Men, and images which are used by W.B. Yeats in Sailing to Byzantium. Mahapatra was also influenced by Whitman's imagery. Walt Whitman, one of the important American poets. Most of Mahapatra's symbols are personal symbols used for specific purposes. And the imagery and thought content are proportionately integrated. And when you analyze the entire poetry of Jayant Mahapatra, you'll find out that, like most of the Indian English poets, Mahapatra writes in free verse. And he avoids the rigorous metrical verse. He presents irregular stanzas in elliptical style. That is very much significant when you read his poems, with no rhyming scheme. The tone is equivalent to colloquial and conversational. When you read the poems which are prescribed in a course, Dawn at Puri, Grandfather, and Indian Summer, they'll find out the tone which is very colloquial, conversational, and how free verse is used by the poet. So, this was in brief introduction about the poet. This will help you when you start analyzing the poems which are prescribed in your course. So, in my next video, I'll be discussing the poem Dawn at Puri. Thank you very much.